finish up with leaves, we're going to talk about leaf development and growth, and then senescence, and then some leaf modifications. So I'm going to move in a little bit closer so you can maybe take some notes here on all of the different modifications. And this part over here. Okay, so first of all, let's just talk about leaf development. The first thing that you should know is that it's determinate, unlike the growth of the rest of the plant that basically keeps going throughout the plant's lifetime. The leaves themselves have a certain size and shape, which is genetically determined, and that means that a leaf will, once it sprouts off of the stem, it will come out, it will grow to its full length, and then it will start developing back. So usually that's called expansion. So it'll expand out to its full length, its shape. So if it has any lobes or points to it or whatever, it will be that shape. And then it will start developing the vascular tissue back towards the original vascular trace. So as it expands, of course, it'll have that midrib trace, and then the smaller vessels will expand back, develop back towards the petiole. So that's a little different than how the apical meristem grows, or quite a bit different. The other thing that you should know, of course, are the buds. The buds can give rise to new leaves, especially if apical dominance is lost. And what that means is the apical meristem is sending hormones to the buds or the lateral buds below. And those hormones, it's called auxin, will turn off those buds, make them not sprout. But if you were to remove that apical meristem, if something bit it off, for example, then the lateral buds would sprout and form new leaves. They can also form branches. So as the plant is starting to enlarge, those apical buds or axillary buds, lateral buds, could become branches, or they could become flowers. So let's just real quickly look at the flower setup. That is, we will go over flowers a little bit more later, but just so you know some of the terminology for flowers. Flowers have on the very outside a green part that usually, like if you're looking at a bud, it would be the green part covering the colored part of the flower. Those are called sepals. Then you have the petals, and these are the parts of the plant that are attractive to pollinators or protective. Sepals are kind of protective. The petals are attractive, drawing in pollinators that will help the flower function as a reproductive organ. The male parts are called the stamen. The top is, the stamen has an anther, which is the top part that contains the pollen, and the filament, which is the stalk that is holding it up. And the female part is the carpel, and the carpel has a stigma, which is the top part where the pollen would stick, the style, which is the part that's leading to it, excuse me, leading to the ovary, which is down here. Okay, so those are the flower parts. Tara. All right, and then talking about leaf senescence. What that means is a leaf can die, and if it dies, it's going to have, and this is usually a person of fall. What's going to happen is it has to seal off the stem. So it'll have what we call an abscission zone. This is like putting a bunch of callus there, which is basically a lot of cuticle kind of material or suberin or something that is going to block off the vascular system and the cortex from the petiole. And then it'll have a separation zone. And that separation zone is where it will disconnect and fall off. Of course, the leaf itself is going to reabsorb most of the materials that are within the leaf before this happens. So, for example, it'll take a lot of the nutrients out of the leaf. The chloroplasts start to die. The chromoplasts show up. The chromoplasts start to degrade, and then the whole leaf will fall off. Okay, so going through some of these leaf modifications. The first one that I want to talk about is sun versus shade leaves. this is usually on a single plant, where the top leaves that are getting a lot of sun will be smaller and thicker than the leaves that are shaded out near the bottom of the plant that are larger and thinner. If you think about it, if you're small and thick, you can stack your chloroplasts on top of each other if you have plenty of sun, and you would want to be small to reduce the number of stomata, so that you would lose less water. And in the shade ones would be larger and spread out so that you could maximize the photosynthetic surface and lower light. My dog is squeaking, sorry. And then some other modifications are things like tendrils. So tendrils can either be a stem modification or a leaf modification. These are little things that attach to a structure. So a stem modification would be in a grape, and a leaf modification would be in a pea. And so if you've ever grown or seen those growing, you know what I'm talking about. They're the parts that would attach to a stick or a fence or something like that. A cladophyll is a stem in a leaf form. This, like asparagus, is a cladophyll. And so these are also like the branches of a spineless cactus are also considered cladophylls. Spines are modified leaves. Some cacti have spines. Thorns are modified branches. So these would be in the leaf axils, usually in the leaf base or the axil of the leaf. Or they could either be under or above the leaf, but usually, where a bud would be. So some cactus have that, acacias have that. You can have prickles. These are modified epidermal cells, like in roses. Carnivorous plants like the sundew, and food storage structures like tubers, that would be a potato, or rhizomes. Both the tubers and rhizomes are underground stems. That's why potatoes have eyes. You can have bulbs, which basically it's like a really short stem, but a storage structure that is either right above the ground or maybe in the ground, like a caladium. And then a corm, which is like a fleshy stem. This is mainly kind of a it looks like a bulb, but it's above ground. So things like gladiolas or crocus or something like that. And you can even have a really fleshy stem, like in cabbages or kohlrabi. And you can have a fleshy petiole, which would be celery. So all of those are modified for storage of either water and or starches. And then you can have storage for, in particular, water, which would be succulents, or the tissue of cacti. In other words, a lot of cacti will not have leaves at all. Instead, they just have modified, they'll have either spines or thorns, and they won't have leaves. The stem is photosynthetic and has a lot of water storage tissue.